All righty.
Okay. All right, so roll call?
All righty, so welcome to our Arts Commission work session for February 2nd, 2023. Thank you all for being here. Tammy Jo Wilson,
Here.
Tima Carlson has an excused absence. Jen Woodward. Here. Josh Planton.
Here.
Choir. Here. And Trieste Andrews.
Here.
And I think we're waiting for Karen, is that what we said? Karen Burrig is
Karen
on-
said she was going to be late, I think.
Okay, en route. And I believe Emma Lugo is planning to call in, so. All right, thank you.
All right, well, I guess we just begin our work session, right? We have no other tasks at hand, and I believe we were talking about grant guidelines. Yeah. And so thinking about organizational grant and an events-specific grant, and then what is the presentation to city commission?
What I put together, I think after we come up with the program parameters and the guidelines, we'll want to schedule a time with the city commission to let them know about it.
Okay.
And inform them of the guidelines that you come up with. So you are the ones who will be approving the grants, but we do want to inform city commission about the grant programs.
So can I just do a quick recap for all of us and Josh?
Sure, of course.
To kind of get our brains warmed up. So we are here to talk tonight about how to create some guidelines and parameters to offer 2 grants through our budget that we need to spend fairly quickly. And we narrowed it to 2 categories. One would be organization grants, which would go to local organizations to support arts. And tonight we're going to figure out what that means. But then we also had a separate category about wanting to support events specifically to facilitate those and to allow the community to really see and understand and to organize it in a different fashion so that the events grant cycles could be shorter to allow for the timelines around and the needs of event planning specifically.
Okay.
And probably a simpler application for an event.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that make sense? Does that sound right to everybody about kind of
Yes.
where we left off?
Yeah.
Do we want to maybe start with the event grant because it hypothetically is going to be simpler, and then we could add on from there? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so in my experience of what I've seen other grants happen and what grants my organization has offered, we can do it on like a calendar, like a quarterly or a couple times, like 2 times a year, 4 times a year, whatever we decide works with our budget and our seasons. And as far as like how events happen in Oregon City, like maybe it's a summer and a winter, and then have that be publicly posted so that the people organizing and facilitating the events can know when to apply based on when their event is going to occur. So if they have an event in the summer, they'll know the deadline to apply for that and to plan for those funding, and they can have that. And then if they have another, so it's a quicker turnaround that they can plan with, if that makes sense. And then the other part of it would be making the grant application fairly simple. Simple and straightforward, because if you're applying 2, 3, 4 times a year, you don't need this gigantic application with tons of questions and budgets and research and all of this. We just really need to understand and make sure that they are supporting art in Oregon City and supporting our mission of what the Arts Commission is trying to do. Creating a simple application form for events and posting a regular timeline, and then just agreeing on those guidelines. We're just doing a summary. Hi.
Hi, Karen.
Can we pause and get Karen, not let you get settled?
Yeah, the extra.
We're sitting over here because the microphone sound didn't work over there, and they wanted to record our thoughts. And I was just saying that we're talking about grants, and grant funding in the two categories of, like organization grants and then events grants specifically. So,
I've got pulled up the Wilsonville call for grants and the RAC call that just went out, because I think there's some things in there that might be helpful for us. And in the Wilsonville one thing that like comes to mind as we're talking about like scheduling and application process, is they have a version of people being able to come and present like 3-minute pitches.
interesting,
And
yeah.
I wonder from an accessibility standpoint, if that might be something that we want to consider instead of like just limiting it to a written.
I would
format.
I definitely would agree that they could come to a commission meeting during, like we could set aside like a meeting or two for, to have them come.
It's a great idea.
And that's what they did for the, so I printed out a variety of different grant applications. And they did that for the community enhancement grant, process where they had, you filled out a form and whatnot, but then you came and you were able to speak for 3 minutes about your, proposal.
Yeah, I think if we do that, it would be helpful for us to also ask them the same questions that are on the application, so
Yeah.
that when we go to evaluate the different proposals side by side, we have the same metric to evaluate.
Yeah.
But then they don't have to write it, they can just come, and we can ask the questions, and they can answer them, and then they can speak for a few minutes as well if they choose to.
If I understand correctly, you're saying that they don't need to have a written application, or it's the same questions as a written?
That, we're saying there's an option to not have a written application where they could come directly to us, and then we would ask them the questions on the written application that we will then come up with in person, and then they could just answer them and then talk freely if they choose to, briefly.
They can do it like, do the public comments
Yeah,
portion? Like,
yeah.
If they wanted to come and just,
Right,
okay.
But I do think,
Efficient way for us too.
I think that
That
would
could be
be,
efficient for us.
yes.
but I don't know, I think that might be challenging if we didn't have, written information down to be able
Well,
to.
the meeting will be recorded, right?
Well, you mean just information for them to look at so they can prepare for the?
No, for us to be able to make the selection process
Yeah.
type of a thing. And some of it, and again, I mean, I think it's a possibility. I'm just expressing what I would, the experience that we had, which was kind of interesting in and of itself, is that you submitted an application, and then the commission or the selection committee was able to have everybody's application and review it, look at all of that. But then at that day that they're making that decision is the day that you actually hear the presentation as well. So it was kind of like an added bit of information that then.
But that doesn't really
scored.
facilitate the accessibility thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
I'm wondering if, let's see if I had it, let's see if I can remember it now. So we have a basic application form with, I don't know, 4 questions or whatever. And then they come and give their presentation, and we ask them the 4 questions. What if at that time when they come, we have an evaluation sheet that we use both with the presentations in person and for the ones written, so we could have that and fill out and make notes and like score that while they are here. And for them, it would actually be an advantage because we would be able to ask follow-up questions in the moment as well as hearing their answer. And so that we could do their evaluation in that moment as opposed to trying to remember and then, do you know what I mean? But still use the same matrix and the same like evaluation form.
I don't understand why we wouldn't ask for a written, I think it's the Metro Enhancement Grant that you were referring to, Karen, which I've done for a couple, 2 or 3 times also, but and it's a pretty simple grant to fill out, but you fill out the grant and you submit it, And then they strongly recommend, they don't require it, but they strongly recommend you being at the night for the presentation. You get 3 minutes to present, and they can ask questions because the commission has already followed up on reading all the applications, and then they can ask questions. And so I don't know why we wouldn't ask for a written.
I'm gonna let you take that one, Jen.
I think having that could be a barrier for people like that might have dyslexia or
Okay.
reading, you know, like
Or technology barriers.
just all kinds of reasons that already create like a shutdown of people that might feel more comfortable just expressing themselves.
If they've never applied for a grant before, if they don't have, I know a lot of people don't have a computer at home, so to try and do a grant application on your phone just doesn't even make sense.
That's a really great thought.
I would say that, to keep the accessibility piece, but also have something written down, like if they came, like I think just having, basic contact information from them.
Yes.
And then also just like, what are you gonna use the money for? A basic budget outline and like, when are you gonna use the money? Like, for them, like, so if we get their pitch
We
and we're
could
like,
put that
that's great.
in the online application, like they would still
Yeah.
have to fill out.
Okay, they still have to fill it
something.
online.
We
Okay.
gotta have to have
That's what I
something
was,
in the
yeah, that's what I was
computer.
confused about.
Yeah,
So one thing that, after last meeting, I was, because we were wanting to actually write the organization and event grant tonight,
well,
or,
I mean, we can't try, but I
Okay.
imagine the full sentences and the structure and all of the paragraphs.
yeah,
like,
would need to be
probably-
hashed out.
Yeah.
So like reading a bunch of grants and going back, and,
Yes.
I really love Seattle's grants, but by the way, I like how they're structured and everything like that and what they do. I just made this little worksheet that I thought might
Yeah.
be easy for us if we filled out. This is grants, should be like organization grants and event grants, so, but I just like, I think if we fill this out, and then it even has like, we can make an outline of the structure and an outline of the application for each grant, I thought it might help us just nail
Do you
out
have
the
more than
details.
one?
Yeah, I made some for everybody.
I can make copies too if you want.
Taking a step back to the written application, I agree that we don't want to put any barriers of entry for people, but I worry a little bit about people misusing that and thinking that they can just come in and ask for money without putting any thought into an event. I would want, legitimate
Yes, yes.
submissions. And maybe one way to do that is, one, we allow submission of answers to the questions in a number of formats, whether it's written, like PowerPoint, if people need more imagery and stuff like that to help explain a little bit, less text, more imagery, recordings, videos, anything like that they want to submit. If they don't want to do any of that and they want to come and present it, that's fine. But we make it a policy that we won't make a decision on that one at that meeting, that they can't
Yes, yeah.
expect a 1 month turnaround on a decision if they just come in and present it, right? So if their event is 5 days away when they come in to present,
Oh, yeah,
that's on,
yeah.
I think we should put a little more structure just around to make sure that people aren't coming in last minute to,
Yeah, I think that could get worked out pretty easily in the grant parameters of the grant that is awarded. In this time, the funds are to be used during this
Yeah.
time period.
Yeah.
So that it wouldn't even be eligible if the event was happening right after. It wouldn't even work because they wouldn't have the money yet. Like, it just wouldn't.
yeah, I mean.
And it can't
but
be
you-
paid after the fact. It would have to be.
I'm assuming that most people will get that, but some people might think that they're
Yeah.
gonna get a check that night and they're gonna walk out
That's
with
probably
it.
true, yeah.
So we just
If
wanna
they're
make it
really
clear
serious, yeah,
that this is a
Yeah.
couple,
Yes.
weeks process to go through.
Yeah. But that should all be in the eligibility list of like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
But
also
I agree
wonder.
with you if like, we're doing this for accessibility for people that might have like, dyslexia or don't have access to computers and stuff like that. That may also be the type of person that would not really quite
Agreed.
grasp,
Yeah.
like, this isn't, my thing's tomorrow. So I
Yeah.
think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was just gonna suggest that if we want, and I think you're right to try to make it as accessible to people as possible, but if someone's having problems, getting something together in writing, maybe they could contact staff and I could sit down with someone for 2 hours and help them write the application.
Yeah,
If there was a language issue, we could try to, well, that's just, I can offer myself as a resource. I don't know about a language translation, but
Does the city offer any other resources for accessibility? I mean, I imagine there's lots of things that people would need access to that might have some type of disability that they would rely on.
yeah,
resources
I
from
can
the
find
city.
out what's available at the library. I mean, there may be resources to assist people. I think it's a very good issue to address, and there may be resources to help
Yeah.
people get that application done.
Sorry, this just popped in my head too. Like, if we're talking about resources, RAC does,
Workshops.
workshops beforehand.
Yeah.
And that might be like, at this workshop, we will help you fill out your information, we will help you fill out your statement of purpose and help you fill out a budget. And then you can come pitch at the next meeting, like do it that way.
And I have worked with an artist in the past that did have, difficulty with written and reading. And so, what I did was just sat down with the artist and we did a whole audio. Then I put together what he had told me. Then I submitted it to him, back to him, where he had someone help him read through it and approved it and signed off on it.
Yeah.
before
That
we
is
went
way
to
more
the-
than
Yeah,
we could
that
do.
we can do.
But
Workshop.
we could have, there could be a 2-hour workshop, but I feel that none of us as art commissioners should be there helping them with that. It would have to be
we could,
somebody
yeah.
else. And I don't know what our capacity city-wise or about like, I don't know how that would work.
Sure, I mean, I think I'm definitely available to help people. We can make
If it was like one-
2-hour appointments,
One
unless,
2-hour
but if there's
Well, I
like
would say
25
one-
people,
no,
then we
one-
might.
like one time slot,
find
like
it.
1 2-hour time slot. Everybody that wants to apply comes, and
Okay.
you could talk about it, explain it, answer questions, like be there if they
think
wanted
that-
to like do
Yeah,
it.
I think that absolutely makes sense, yeah.
Because meeting one-on-one, you could end up with who knows how many people
Yeah.
answering the same question over
Yeah,
and over.
that's
again.
true.
Well, you can also put like a person, like an attendance limit on a workshop, like, if that's realistic. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know if we'll need that. That's
if,
very,
you know.
yeah.
we could be like, 10 people come to this workshop. But if
Yeah.
we had just worksheets for them to fill out by hand,
Yes.
that one person could just lead them through, and then we could have that when they come do their pitch, that would be super helpful.
One thing that I'd really like to define tonight, if we can, is the difference between the event funding and then the grant funding. If there is a
Well,
difference
they're both grants,
between
but
that.
one's geared towards grant, events specifically. And one is more broad, so it could be a mural, it could be something for youth, it could be,
So what are like the top things we have to think about when we think what defines an event versus someone
yeah,
beyond the
so
mural?
let's do that. I think that's a great place to start right
Yeah.
now.
So I would say an event is going to be a limited duration of time, right? And it's going to be probably once, well, maybe not once a year, but if it's a series of events, but it's going to be one time. It's going to have to be open to the public if it's an event.
100%. Accessible, I think we should require that the events that are funded are accessible.
Yeah.
Oh, accessible, open to the public, time specific. Yes.
So also, I just want to clarify, these are art-related events. They are
Yes.
not
Yes.
like, so I think
Art-related
calling it
events.
events grant is a
Yes,
little
art
rough.
related,
So I think
time specific,
we might
accessible.
want to,
Are we getting-
when we write it, we might want to name it something that.
Oh, yes, yes.
So I'm just putting that out there because I'm like, events, well.
Art-
my
an
cousin and
arts
I have
event
a hot
grant,
dog
but yeah.
vending machine and we
Yeah.
also have a
And
baseball
working
team.
with the chamber and Joka over the last week, thinking about different things, I put a whole list together of who knows what festivals and art-related events are in Oregon City. Which, and I have it in writing if anybody wants it, but Joka, of course, has the most. But I think that's kind
Yeah.
of
Well, and I think an event
Good
grant
place
too, because Oregon City's wanting music, like it could be like
Could be
somebody's
music.
band wants to like put on a show, or like high school students wanna put on
play.
a battle of the bands, or like a battle of, music videos made on iPhones, say like that.
It's very specific.
Well, I know, it's like, it's just,
In terms of accessibility, if they charge for attendance at the event, even though it's open to the public, are we gonna care?
No.
No, they can
And when I
charge.
say accessibility, I mean like people have to be able to like wheelchair accessibility.
No, I understand that side of it too, but I was just asking on the payment side. I mean, we expect people could be making a profit off the event if they host it and sell tickets to it, and we still give them the grant because it's arts related, it's open to the public, it's accessible, people
Right.
who have disabilities can attend.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it takes money to, they're not getting that money until after the event's over. So in order for the event to happen, they need support to be able to,
oh, so we
Even if
wouldn't
they're
give money to
selling
people
tickets.
before the event?
yes, 100%.
Okay,
Grants never go retroactive like that. Like, I've never seen one pay backwards.
okay.
It's gotta be before.
Do we want to limit what the funds can be specifically used for within their budget? So they couldn't use it for buying food for the event. It would have to be, those funds would have to be allocated towards,
Well, that's a good one. So can we back up for a minute? I want to make sure you're getting, and we're all, so we have, it's an arts specific event of some kind, and we can define arts within us more if we need to. It is time specific.
Time specific.
It is accessible. It is
Open to the public.
open to the public. And so now we're into defining what funding is, what is eligible, what things are eligible to use their
Yeah.
funds on. So I think I would probably think of it almost in the reverse of like what they couldn't, because otherwise the list would be so long. Like, are we gonna allow them to buy alcohol with the funding?
oh, no.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like food to me seems reasonable because like almost every, like so many events have,
Yeah.
it could be food, a whole food-based event.
Yeah.
But alcohol is sometimes not included in grant funding. They're kind of weird about that. So, and what other things, is there anything else we can think of that we wouldn't want?
So would
tax
that mean
dollars
that
to
we
go
would
for?
not fund the Brew Fest if they needed?
We could fund the Brew Fest, we just wouldn't be funding the purchase of alcohol specifically. But if they needed tents, the grant
Yeah.
funds could go towards tents.
Right.
If they needed porta potties, the funds could go towards porta
Or like,
potties.
yeah. something like
Would that be supporting
They need live music, yeah.
paying the musicians
Right.
that are gonna be there.
Yes.
Unless they can make a case for
Yes.
beer being.
Yes.
I think one
I
thing.
think, oh, sorry, one thing that should be.
Choir, you're so good about raising your
sorry.
hand, I should probably start
No, no,
raising my
okay, you
hand
go
too.
first.
I think, I mean, maybe you ask the applicant to specifically state, how is this event enhancing the arts in Oregon City?
Yeah, we wouldn't
Yeah,
technically do a
I think
brew
the
fest,
Brew
not
Festival
art brew
is,
fest.
you know, that's up to you guys, but I don't see how the Brew Festival is gonna be
Yes,
supporting the arts.
yes.
Well, they do have musicians and have.
True.
Yeah, but the whole
Festival
point of the
for
festival
kids.
has nothing to do, is
Yeah.
so
about.
the event should be promoting arts, not just be arts related. It should be promoting.
I mean, I
I would
think,
say both of those.
yeah.
Also, yeah, also, I feel the event should be supporting, like, people who are trying to, like, put their art, music, dance, performance out there. Like, I think of it on a smaller level, like a big festival is already kind of funded. I feel like if we're wanting to, create grants that are actually like encouraging people to make art in Oregon City and encouraging people to perform art in Oregon City, I feel like the grant should be open to organizations, but also individuals, and whatever their event project
But
ideas.
is the individual going to be more towards our grant allocations rather than the event allocations?
Well,
Yeah, 'cause
we
most
said
of-
organization grants, that's not for individuals. The two grants are organization and event grants, so these are grants for art organizations. So that this would leave,
I mean,
is that not right, or?
When I think organization, maybe I'm thinking I'm wrong, but I think of like funding that you need to run your business, whether you're an artist or you're an organization that's promoting art or whatever. It might be like more like operational grant, organizational grant, but I think it kind of arrays across groups, organizations, and individuals
Okay.
versus the events.
Yeah, I think for right now, I think I did see that it said just organizations choir, and I was thinking about that because do we want to do individuals? But I think we leave that question for that one. And if we're gonna do it, would we support a singular person not associated with a business, a company, or a nonprofit? So that money that we would be providing them would go into their personal bank account if they are organizing an event. I honestly don't know the answer to that.
I have no problem with that if we're not paying them till after the event. So there has to be some proof the event occurred, that it met the guidelines that we gave them.
But the grants never work that way. You pay ahead of time so that the event can happen,
Yeah.
not after the grant, after the
Yeah.
event.
Then
You're
you
saying-
have to submit a report on
Oh, yeah,
how
so
the
you have to
funds
submit a
were
report, yes,
And
absolutely,
if you're
yeah.
not meeting those requirements, you have to give that money back.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to prove that, yes, this is how I used the funding you gave me, and you submit your budget, and you submit where all the money went, and, yeah, and then
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if you didn't use it in the way that you proposed.
Yeah, grants are to make things happen, not to pay for what already happened.
Yeah.
But then you have to prove that
Mm-hmm.
you use those funds. So that's gonna be part of the.
Yes,
I don't know if we want to stick to events for a little bit, but I do think we need to dig into what Josh was just saying about organizations. I just wrote down organization, but because I thought I heard that at our last meeting, but it might be that if you decide to support individual artists, that could be a potential use of the grant dollars too. So I put down organization because that's what I thought I heard at our last meeting, but perhaps not.
I agree, and I put a pin in it because the application process for supporting an individual artist would not be in line with a grant. It would fit better with the way an organization would apply to be supported. So does that make sense? Like the actual application and the guidelines for funding. Like if it was an artist that had an art exhibit, it was like Art in the Park with Oregon City Parks and Rec, and they applied for an individual grant to help pay for the supplies and materials to make the sculpture that is going in the park. Like that's something I could see happening. But it's the way that we would evaluate that wouldn't be the same as an event,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's right.
And I
So-
think that's gonna be our first thing,
Choir?
is defining an event as opposed to
Yeah.
the grant. What are we funding for events? How is that
Yeah.
different than,
The event, the event grant is also, there's two different types of grants. And choir.
So I know I was not here when we decided on like what we're gonna do, grant and event grants, or organization grants and event grants, but to me, researching grants and writing down these things and distilling it, like for instance, a lot of the grants are grants that do a specific thing in the community, and they are available to individual artists, art organizations, curators, like that. And that's
Yep.
that's what's confusing to me, like putting organizations in there really says, I feel like what would be good and a good use of our time would be determine what outcome do we want in our community from these grants, and then write a purpose statement for each grant, and then go into who is available to it, and then go down to the guidelines from there. Like, does that, I don't know. So I wrote down grant structure, like you have your purpose, your eligibility, dates and timelines, funding and evaluation of criteria. But I think it would help us if we first asked ourselves, what are we thinking that this grant is doing in our community? And then second, from that information, just wrote a purpose statement for each grant to guide us into answering the questions like, who should have this? What amount of money should they get?
Yeah.
What type of things are we saying yes or no to?
So how about first, we just, for the sake of everybody's brains, write organizations and individuals.
Okay.
And then go back
Okay.
to the events grants. I can't spell individuals, but I'm gonna know it says that right there. And go through the process that you just described.
Okay.
So what was the first step that you were just saying?
First step is like, for each grant, let's ask ourselves what we think it's gonna be doing for our community.
What,
Like,
did you say purpose? I think
yeah, so
was
that
the
we can
word.
write, yeah, what do we wanna get to do so we can write a purpose statement?
Yeah, so what is it doing? What's the purpose of the events grant? Which I feel like is pretty obvious, but I guess it's helpful to articulate it. Yes.
I guess I would say, as we're talking about events and we're describing what an event is that maybe it's an activity that occurs on a single or multiple days. That distinguishes it from a different type of grant that might be producing art, which isn't an activity.
Can
So
we
I
say-
think that that's kind of helpful in understanding, you know, like how we're differentiating what an event is versus
Yeah.
not an event.
What if we say an event has a limited lifespan? So it could be one day, it could be a couple of weeks, if it's, you know, a like play or something someone's putting on in the parks, but it's limited. There will be an endpoint, and after that, whatever, there won't be anything left. Like, it's not gonna be a statue in a park that gets unveiled. We wouldn't actually pay for anything of the statue going into the park.
You could
but
pay
if
for
we
the
pay for
unveiling
tags,
ceremony.
yeah. But that's the distinction, is that
Yeah.
it would be the organization grant would be for something if you were gonna do something that was gonna remain, or, you know, and then the event is a limited lifespan. It's gonna be only for a portion of that is temporary.
Yeah.
So, but getting back to Coyer's thing, so defining what the purpose of the event, like why are we doing it? Why are
Yeah.
we supporting it? Like, is in relation to art and what is giving to us as a community, like the why
Yeah.
are we supporting
So
this
like with an
event?
event grant, some of the whys would be, we want to bring traffic into Oregon City from outside people to see the
people,
arts. Like
yes,
outside
yes.
residents, like,
Bring
you
in,
know,
to bring tourism to Oregon
tourism,
City
yeah.
to support the
Art
local
tourism
company. Yes.
specifically. You know, creating opportunities for artists and art groups
Yeah.
directly in Oregon City. Like, so these are
Like,
examples
yeah.
that I think that I would want.
Curious, could you give us some, like, things that you would see at the benefit of the Festival of the Arts? Like, how would you describe that benefit
I
to
mean,
Oregon
to
City?
me, it's as simple as you're supporting the arts and you're bringing art into Oregon City as.
So
an-
providing a cultural experience for the residents of Oregon City?
Cultural community experience.
I'm just gonna really simplify it. I think it is supporting arts in Oregon City. You know, that you give support to the artists in Oregon City so they can present and be a part of it. I mean, events to me, it's just as simple as that. And I don't really want to get into the, you know, nitty gritty of it because we can divine it, you know, ad nauseum to what it is, but it's to support the arts in Oregon City. You know, and I think not everybody realizes that the events that go on in Oregon City, they're not supported by the city. They are supported by sponsors and a lot of hard work of trying to make that go and making very little money to throw back into the next years. And so that as the Art Commission, if we can be able to support them financially, so they're not struggling with, how am I gonna pull this off? I mean, not just the Festival of the Arts, which every little penny that we made was every year was, when I ran it for 5 years, was like anywhere between $5,000 and $7,000, which to us was amazing. It went directly into our budget for the next year's festival.
Yeah.
That's all it went to. Same with DOCA. DOCA runs the First City Celebration with sponsors. They don't get money from the city. So to be able to have money through the Art Commission and start to support our city who are already doing art-related events, I think would be a wonderful support.
That's answering the question though, what do we want it to do? Well, one of the things we want it to do is to support events that are already going on. Like, so that is in that statement. But I think if I'm sorry. No, go ahead. But I think if we just hash out all the things we want it to do, we can make a cohesive statement of purpose that can guide us through all of our questions, like who are we giving it to? What do we want them to use it for? Like all those things.
Can we try an exercise? So, can each one of us pick like one thing? Like Trias is supporting the artists, like all about supporting the artists, that we feel that the events should do. Like my thing that I would pick that is different from that is I think the festival needs to support the city itself as an entity that we are using tax dollars from the city, that it needs to provide something to the citizens. So a arts experience for the citizens, and the festival does that. Like the festival, the artists that I came and saw, most of them didn't live in Oregon City. But I, as an Oregon City resident, benefited from having them there and being able to see their art, purchase their art, have enough to go out there and do it. So it's a benefit to the citizens of Oregon City as well. So that's mine. Does anybody want to pick something?
We do round robin?
Anyone have any thoughts, ideas?
When you say, so cultural, I'm sorry, Karen.
Oh, so I have to admit, I don't have it in my hands, but I would really love for us to use our vision or that would we worked on. And I can't find it, but I feel like it would be relatable here. And then building on what you had just said, we might want to be clear that the event occurs in Oregon City,
Right,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So
So
that's yours, making sure geographically. it's
geographically,
here.
yes. And then
I mean, it sounds obvious, but sometimes you gotta say that stuff.
right.
Yes.
So, and then I'd like just the opening or whatever, to the context of all of this, to be around that vision that we worked on, because it identified some key elements, but I don't know where to find it.
Anybody else inquired? You have one?
I just.
well, I think mine was to support
think where to-
community connection. I think you said that.
Not quite the same.
Yeah, support community connections to experiences with art and music. Like, I think we should start saying music and art, because I feel like when we say art, all of us kind of go
Yeah,
visual
art, yeah.
unintentionally.
Yeah. Arts with an S, yeah.
Yeah.
With an S.
So, yeah, my thing is to support community connections / experiences with art and music, so.
Community
And I think
connection.
it's always a good idea to do round robins, so we're going,
Yeah.
so everybody has a voice, but Jen, do you have, like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't.
That's fine.
I don't have anything to say at this time.
Okay.
I will when I
Yeah.
got something.
Josh, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I think what we've got here is a pretty good list. We just need to put it together in a purposeful statement, but promoting art, artists, tourism in Oregon City, promoting arts education, and then for the events, it should really be a showcase of the art or a presentation of the art, versus maybe the art itself, right? Does that make sense?
No, say,
Well, because events,
it has to be the main feature as opposed to the band playing at the beer fest, is that what?
No. But if you're saying, okay, the beer fest, let's take that for an example.
Okay.
Is the cultural, aspects of Oregon beer, culture, showcasing it might be that they hire a band to play or a performing arts group that
Yeah.
is relevant, that performs there. Instead of it being like, okay, we're also gonna unveil this plaque that we are putting for the beer festival at whatever location it's at, it wouldn't be that plaque, it would be the presentation of it, it's the event, right? Around,
Oh, I see what you mean, but I don't know if I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know if the
That's
brew fest would
problematic.
be a good fit. I kind
well, I think the brew fest is a little bit hard of a,
Yeah, that's a
We
hard
don't need your money.
Yeah, or we can pick a different choir.
Sorry if you're watching
like,
this, professional organizers, but
I think one thing we need to remember is we report to the tourism and to that's who we're under, is the tourism
If we put
and
this,
economic
yes.
development.
so I think some delineation of definitions of what we're talking about events. Supporting arts performances within festivals, so thereby
So music.
supporting, music,
festivals,
dancing, theater,
theater,
within
yes.
the festivals. But that would be giving money to an organization for their event, to help them for a specific thing in their event. I feel like events can also be like, hey, we want to start an independent film festival in Oregon City. Great, we're gonna help you with your flyers, we're gonna, like, we can give funding to help you start that. Or, it can be performances by individual artists, like I'm an artist here in Oregon
Yeah.
City, I play music, I wanna do a concert, I need help getting the word out, can I have $5 for flyers, things like that.
So that is addressing the question of, do we want to allow individuals and organizations or businesses?
I think if we allowed individuals, especially if we're doing the 3-minute pitch, I think we'd get some really cool things happening here. Like, and they could be smaller things. We could both help fund arts things happening in the events and help support the events that are already happening here. And we can get some cool pop-up little things that we would never have thought of. And that goes back to, like, I remember when we were reading the results from the survey, we might be getting things, because we're letting it into individuals, we might be actually getting things that cohere with that survey of what people want to see in Oregon City.
So, holding that thought of potentially individuals, another thing about grants that maybe not everybody here is thinking about, grants rarely provide 100% of the funding for the grant, for whatever the thing is that it's giving money for. So when thinking about allowing individuals, I think that same rule should apply. And if an individual wants to do the event, they need to be invested and have either invested themselves personally or additional support, and not be fully funded.
I do wonder about, like, if we structure financial amounts to, like, delineate that kind of support, like it could be like $250 to $500 for individuals, and then like a larger pool for
Yeah.
bigger things, so that we could not have that pressure of.
But who's to say that an individual can't plan an event that costs $10,000, right? Like, say someone wants to.
But do we want to-
encourage one person to be, like,
Yeah.
I think that's like.
I mean, I
Well,
agree.
what I'm saying is, if we do $250 to $500, but really they could use $1,000 to bring in some additional artists. So,
It just doesn't have to be us giving them the money.
well, I understand that, but you're saying you're going to limit an individual versus an organization to less because why they
It's a
can't
greater
put on a big
sense of
event like
risk.
an organization can?
No, it's a greater risk. If that person got sick, if something happened to them, there's no backup plan. Whereas with an organization, there's multiple individuals that are assured to be able to carry out what they are agreeing to do.
But how do
So-
you put that in the specifications? How do you do when you present?
Well, if the event doesn't take place,
Regulate.
the money has to be returned. If the event doesn't meet the requirements, it has to be returned. I mean,
Yeah, but we also want to be considerate about, like, not making a really big mess for, like, anticipating that we're gonna set up a system where there might be, like, that's why you want to build in those, like, safety nets for people,
Yeah.
so that the city is not then asking for, like, 10 people.
well, but anyone who's planning an event, I mean, you have cancellation policies, you have force majeure terms in your contracts that alleviate you of a lot of those debts if something were to happen, like a pandemic hits, right?
Yeah.
So they should be, we could ask them those questions in their process here. I mean, that should be part of our thing is, do you have the contracts in place? What are your cancellation terms for those big contracts if you're an individual?
But
applying?
I think to Choir's point, like, the exciting thing about, like, having those smaller amounts is to, like, let people dip their toes that might be, like, not fully, like, integrated into the arts community and really professional and really know what they're doing. It's like,
Yeah.
try out doing a pop-up concert, or like,
And they can
you
get
know.
multiple
And
funders.
that's fine.
They can get other funders instead of risking the city's dollars if they are doing it by themselves.
I'm not saying they can't, but what I'm trying to say is that, if they're coming to us, they're gonna provide us a budget, right? And we're gonna see how much of the grant they're asking for from us. If they're asking $1,000 or $500, of that is the total percentage of their budget. Now, if their budget is like, I've got 20,000 in other sponsorships from local businesses to do this, but I want $1,000 extra to bring in this band, cover some of their extra expenses to come and perform, or artists to come and showcase his art at this event, then I think we shouldn't limit ourselves because it's just an individual planning it, right? Now, we can
But
still,
it's-
if
okay.
someone wants to do like an art talk at a local coffee shop or business and bring people in to explore new ideas and really something interesting like that, but they're like, oh yeah, it's gonna be $500. I wanted to get like $250 from you guys. Like, we would see the percentages of the budget, and we could make a call that, yeah, that makes sense, that, you know, you just need the extra money to dip your toe in the water here versus, okay, you're someone who has some experience putting on some of these events, you have a good budget, you have a good business model here for it, you're gonna make money off it or whatever. Yeah, we'll be willing to give you that money, and it seems to be something that would be really beneficial to the citizens of Oregon City, right?
Yeah.
And bring tourism dollars even.
So you're advocating for just having the same,
I don't think we should differentiate it because there's a lot of people that work in this world that are just sole proprietors, right?
Yeah.
So-
I have a side business.
but again, that's not an individual, I mean, consider that a
Sole
business.
proprietor is an individual. It's her tax ID.
Yeah, it's
It's
her-
not another
yeah,
entity
yeah.
tax ID. She's not covered by LLC or anything.
So, so I printed out some grant, examples if we want to pass them around and look at them, but in the arts, one of the RAC grants, the Arts, 3C, which is basically all their grants snowballed into one, all their previous grants, but, so they have, a smaller grant request, 1,000 or 2,000, will have a more streamlined and simple application. A larger amount, 3,000 to 5,000, requires more information and budget details. So we could do it that way, like, hey, if you want to just be like, you know, like I have, you know, a poetry reading I want to put on at Black Ink, and I just need like $100 for flyers, and, you know, and I already have like $50 for my cousin. I don't know, this is way small, but what, you know, then that's an easy streamline, and those can be the 3-minute pitches if we're gonna do that way. And then the bigger amounts, we could be like, you have to present us with a nice, big, chunky application that we know exactly what's happening, and I don't know if that's an idea.
So 2 categories, but either an individual or an entity could apply for either category.
Yeah, and here they're saying, if you ask for 1,000 to 2,000, you have a simple application process. If you're asking for 3,000 to 5,000, you have this other application process.
Yeah,
We
like
could just do
they're-
it that way, like,
They don't seem to distinguish between an individual and organization. They're distinguishing between size of the loan or grant you're asking
Yeah.
for, not
Yeah.
loan. I
Yeah.
shouldn't say loan.
no interest, no payback.
I would agree with that. Does everybody else
It's a good
agree with
structure.
that?
It's a good structure.
So, going back and summarizing again, so for the events grant, supporting tourism, citizens, artists, community culture, anyway, blah, blah, blah. 2 categories, a higher one, which we can figure out the exact numbers based on our budget, and then a more simplified one.
So what would the
Do we
price
want-
breakdown, I'm sorry, go ahead, keep going, no,
I was
keep
gonna
going,
say,
Tammy,
do
go.
we want the same time, like, because, you know, they would be timed, like, twice a year, 4 times a year seasonally, so that you could request the funding and plan, and receive the funding, and then your event happens, like, plan for that. Would we want the 2 different sizes to fall on the same calendar schedule?
I would say if it's a larger grant request, they should be giving us a little more time. So it should be at least like, say, maybe 3 months before the event versus a $100 request. That could be 6 weeks before.
That wasn't quite what I
Yeah.
meant. I meant like
Oh.
frequency. Like,
Yeah,
is
grant
the larger
cycle.
grant going to be
Yeah.
only maybe twice a year, and the smaller grant would be 4 times a year,
Yeah.
or are both of them going to be 4 times a year, or twice a year?
I think for ease of us, if we have chunky applications, that's a twice a year situation. Smaller things, 4 times a year, why not? Like,
The one problem I have with the smaller ones being on I agree, the 2 seem the best, but if you have a small one that people want to dip their toe in, they might not have that idea until like 3 months before an event, and that could be halfway through that time period. So they would have to then wait till either the next time period, which is
Yep.
another 3 months.
Yep.
But,
Yeah, that's-
I mean, it could,
Grants have to have deadlines, that's fine,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they have to apply, we have to decide the structure, and then the person with the idea, or they have to apply based on our deadlines, then that's just.
Part of the
Grants
process.
or-
Karen, what
part
were
of
you
the
gonna
process.
say? I think Karen was trying to.
I was just gonna say that the model that the Cultural Coalition uses is that $750 and less grants are, which they call these micro grants, are on a rolling basis. And so people can submit at any time within the year, and then they have a subcommittee that decides, and when the money runs out, the money runs out. Whereas their larger grants, which are between $750 and $2,500, they have one date that folks submit the grants, and then there's a decision between those grants. So it's a little bit like what you're talking about. It's two sort of methods, but one of their methods is just more of a rolling, which I think there's value in that. And yeah.
You were gonna say?
I did have one question. When we met last time, Trieste, you were saying that the funds should be expended before the end of this fiscal year. So if we're looking to try
I feel
to,
a lot of pressure on that whatever we do tonight, we have to get rid of these funds by June 30th, or they're not gonna give us any more money. So
They said that.
really, I love the discussion, love everything's being said, but if we can get to some really concrete plans so we can get this money out, even for the first time we don't meet everything we wish we could put out there and we could do, but if we can get this money out there, then we'll get more money for the next. So I think
So what do we
that's
need to get it out there? We need the information you were talking about, the purpose, all that, the application form created, the deadline, however we're gonna do that, and the structure, right? So I think for the event stuff, the structure seems, we've talked about that a little bit. The application, I think, will be pretty simple. I think you could literally take one offline from 100 different arts commissions and modify it slightly and have a good working version to go live with. On the biggest thing will be us determining the dollar figure, how much we spend on each, right?
right, depending on who applies probably.
Well, what our award is, I think, did you mean like how much we're gonna award per?
Yeah, if we're gonna do 2 or 3 large ones and then 5 smaller ones, like, is that what our budget is for the events? And the same thing for, I'm not sure, but we have to just figure out the numbers.
And that's part of writing the structure of the grant too, like putting in what is the funding, like that's in it. And I think those are all of those things are equally important and able for it. Because all that information, if we write that structure, that's the information that people look at to explain what the grant is to them, and then the application is another part of that. So, if that makes sense.
And let's get back to like concrete process.
Yep.
Like at one point, we had asked if city staff, if they were gonna be the ones that were gonna write that application up and submit it like the Metro Enhancement Grant that they do, or is that responsibility ours? Do we have to have somebody volunteer here to put the application process together and submit it? Like, how much is the staff gonna work with us on? And we know how overwhelmed you guys are. If we say, yeah, thank you, staff, for doing that, can you really fit that in?
honestly, I think, if we can come up with the basic questions as a group, I can finesse it and give you a draft. I mean, I think that's easy. I think the hard part is thinking about, we've got $38,000 left in the, do we want to give out 2 grants or do we want to give out 20? I mean, that's the thing is I'm hearing micro grants and other grant sizes. So I think we need to decide what the level of our impact is going to be.
Well, we had 38,000, we had 5,000 dedicated to, I'm blanking on the term now, like
I think we
research,
spent
right?
like 2,200 on the survey or something. So I think that's where I'm getting from 4,000, it went down to 1,600
Yeah, so
on
I'm
the
trying to figure out
survey.
what we had what we had allocated to grants. Does anyone remember off the top of
Yeah,
their head?
I did the research on it. So we have 15,000 for events, we have 20,000
That's right.
for grants, and we had 5,000 for marketing and incidentals. I'm not sure that's what we termed it, that we used, we have 3,500 of that left right now.
So for 15,000 for events,
Okay,
like.
that's right.
What
That's
what, out of that chunk, like, what is going to small things and what is going to big things? Do we want to decide that, and then we can decide?
Well, I would ask the question, I mean, same question, but just phrase it a little different, like, how many events do we foreseeably see funding? Like 15,000 could be one event, or we could, like, do we want 1? Do we want 5? Do we want 3? Like, because
I think-
is it like, a couple chunks of 5,000 or 15 chunks of
I think we
5,000?
do best by diversifying the funds as much as possible
Yeah.
across all citizens. So if a number of different organizations wants to do it, we should have at least a minimal amount of funding for them versus funding one project with the whole amount.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, if you did, maybe you did one 5,000 for larger events, you did two 2,500s, and then that leaves you with, what, 5,000 left?
So you could do two 5,000 and two 2,500.
So what if you said the grants were up to $5,000, right?
Right.
So if we were willing to fund something that was up
Up
to
to
$5,000,
Yep.
then we see what comes in. We don't have to predetermine how many right now that we would fund. We would just say that that's valuable enough, and this is, where I
Yeah.
rely more
I
upon
would
what
agree
you
with
guys
that.
think on
Yeah.
how much we should be funding for either an
Yeah.
art or an event. But if we want to fund up to that, then we see if there are competitive, and maybe it's 3 at 5,000, or maybe it's, something else. But I think if we're comfortable, that's the important part to set, is the top limit that we think that we should be giving.
And do a minimum to top, like 250 up to 5,000, and then even preface it that, that we may have to give you less. So then we put it in categories. This is what we really want to fund. This is great, we're gonna give you 5,000. This person asked for 5,000, we can give them 2,500. So within the grant,
I would do
there's
a
a little bit of
lot lower
flexibility.
bottom, because I've gotten grants
lower
where.
bottom?
Yes,
Than 250, $250?
yes. Well, no, 250, I thought you meant 2,500. I was like, drop that down.
$250. $250 up
Okay.
to 5,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because if we
Okay.
were gonna copy these guys, which might be.
Yeah, I agree with that too. We've been partially funded too, so
Yeah.
we can always say, oh, we like all of these things, but this one is a little, but let's give them, everything that's left after we funded everything we like, they can have that last $500 or whatever. And then
I'm
we can really just-
imagining maybe we have like one process with two branches. So like you answer a question, is this a one-time event? You go this way. Is this an ongoing project? You go this way.
That's the amounts though, like, for smaller requests, if you wanna ask for a little bit of money, you have a simple grant application process. If you want a lot, we're gonna want more stuff from you. And I think we just need to determine what our bottom and top is for each of those sections. And then we can determine, after we get the structure of the grant, laid out, we can determine what each application can look like.
Like if this is between $250 and $1,000,
So
you
for-
would do the simple form.
Yeah, simple form, 250 to 1,000, and then the larger, you guys were saying, 2,500 to 5,000 for the larger?
Well, you'd want
Capture
to
that.
do 1,000 up to
Oh, where-
5,000.
Yeah.
Do you really, so you're.
Well, this one was 1,000 to 2,000, and then 3,000 to 5,000, were the.
Someone did
larger.
know how to do the math there.
No, but that doesn't make, it can't touch, because if you're asking for 1,000, you are doing the small process. But if you're asking for 3,000, you're doing the large process, you know what I'm saying? It can't be, like, if you're asking for 1,000 to 5,000, you do the large process, but also if you're asking for 250 to 1,000, you do the small process. So there has to be a jump to delineate, like, the intensity of the application. Like, if you're gonna ask for this chunk, this is a hard application, you're gonna ask for a little chunk, easy application. So you don't want them to touch each other.
Well, yeah, I guess I kind of see that, but I also see like if somebody needs $2,500, I mean, what do they do there? How do they adjust that? And maybe they can adjust it. Maybe that's in their back end stuff that they can. Someone can ask for 3,000. They say, oh no, we're only going to do 2,500.
Yep, yeah, totally. Yeah, we can distinguish that, because also in a grant, you have to also have alternate funding besides the grant that you're applying from. And they're gonna have to show us that in their budget. Like, who else are you getting money from to support the thing you're asking for?
So if we did 2,500 to 5,000, 2,500 to 5,000, and 250 to 1,000,
Yeah,
you could fund at most 10. Oh, if you're doing two of those.
Where's the 1,000 to 2,500? Where's that middle?
That's what we were just saying, we won't have
Right,
that.
there wouldn't
So
be a
if someone wanted
It wouldn't be-
something like
it would be a-
$2,000.
We don't even have it.
No,
Okay.
yeah, you know.
In terms of what they're asking for, so someone could come in and ask for 2,500, and we could say, looking at your budget, what you've provided us, we're gonna give you 2,000. We don't have to, we can still give them between that amount, the 1,000,
Oh, I got you,
2,500, but we, for just
For the
purposes
application.
of generalizing it
Partial
so they can
funding.
know what they
Okay.
need to submit.
All right.
Because one could, like she was arguing, someone could say, oh, I'll do the simple application because I'm only asking for 1,000, but really, they could be much higher than that, or they could be lower, but
But
they could.
what about the people that only want $1,500? They're gonna look at the grant and say, well, I can't apply for this because I need more than $1,000, but I need less than 2,500. I guess
Well, we
it's
could put
grant.
something on the application that says, hey, you're filling this out because you're in this category, but please put in the amount if it's different than this category,
Yeah.
and explain why.
So are we confusing? I'm hearing confusing. The amount that they're asking for is what decides, not the total budget for the project.
Correct.
Right,
Okay.
yeah,
Just wanna
the
make
amount that
that
they're asking for.
Not, yes.
Cause like, we can't do total, if we're helping a festival, like, hire a musician, like, the total budget for the festival is
That's-
gigantic.
yes,
So, like,
yes,
yeah,
that's
we just
not
wanna know.
relevant to
yeah.
which grant, that
Yeah.
it's how much they're
You can get-
asking
Yeah.
for determines
Yep,
the level of difficulty of the application.
yeah.
But I'm just wondering if we want to separate out events anymore, because I feel like if we can just like say, these are the funding categories, these are the things that we want to support,
Oh, yeah,
like,
There
why
you
do
go.
we need to make two different applications?
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I think part of that was to the point of, we gotta spend our money, and so we need to kind of think in chunks to make sure we get all of it out before June 30th, or,
But I think we're gonna decide, and we're gonna preference, if we just, like you say, if we just simplified it and say, we're giving grants from 250 up to 5,000, apply, then they apply, and then we decide between the commission, and we prioritize, and some of them say, we can only give you 1,000 because we know what we have, we know you have 15,000. So we work it out ourselves on what we're gonna fund
Yeah.
with how much money.
Yeah.
And you say that to them, you apply for whatever you want, we may have to not give you partial funding, but we will look at every, like simplify, because
Yes.
we don't have a lot of time. We could do this
Yeah.
next year.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Sum it up.
also, I'm not trying to make things muddy the waters. I think there does need to be some type of delineation of what the grant is doing, because it is, applying for a grant is not easy, and you need a guideline, like, does this grant fit what I'm doing? Okay, great, then I can figure out how to apply, like, it can't just be like, hey, we're giving away money for the arts, what you got? You know,
I mean,
that's
that's
like
like
there's
enhancement
checkboxes,
grant from all the
Like,
grants
is this
that I've gone for.
you know, like
Yeah.
providing information that people can
Yeah.
say, like, this is for an event.
Yeah.
This is,
Yeah.
tell me more
Yeah.
about what this event is for.
Yeah.
This is for, you know, ongoing gallery support in
Yeah.
downtown Oregon City, that like,
Yeah.
that's
So our
a
purpose,
durational.
the purpose for the grant could be like, we want to promote the well-being of artists, like, we can make it broad, and then when we talk about eligibility, like, who can apply, individual artists, organizations, like, and then like, because when you talk about eligibility, you want to do the who, what, and where. Like, so are you gonna say only, you have to determine, like, is this Oregon City artists, is this, Oregon City organization? So like, so if you go to the eligibility piece, you can work out, we could have one big grant and we could say, here's the eligibility piece, if you're putting on an event, if you're going to do an art show, if you're just making some art, if you need help with your business, check which one you want to do.
So I
I
think
mean, the application, the other, Metro Enhancement Grant is probably one of the easiest grants I've ever filled out, but it has a lot of information that you have to put in there. Like, we're not just gonna send out like 250 or 5,000 apply, you're gonna have a whole application that you have to fill out of, what is your organization? How does it promote the arts? When does it take place? Like 5-6 pages of application that you fill out.
I
So
would,
it's-
I would
I'm
say that
trying-
that's gonna
yeah.
slow us down a lot, so I think what you're saying is simplify.
yeah, I think
So
we're
that
saying not
make
do
a
that.
simple, we're gonna do the like small grant request funding that's gonna be super basic, that we can like try and give to as many people as possible.
Yep.
We'll have the larger, more complex questions based on that funding. But we're not gonna make it Metro Grant's a lot of money. We're talking about $5,000.
Not that much
Not
money.
25.
Yeah, we don't have to make the application process chunky, or clunky, but I think before we figure out what the application process is, we need to figure out the structure of our grant. What is its purpose? What is the eligibility? What are the dates and timelines? What is the funding? And what is the evaluation criteria?
Yep.
If we answer those questions, we will have an outline for the grant that we could actually probably put up soon. We'll have to have the application too. But when you go to look at a grant, you look at what the grant is and then you look at the application. So I feel like if we answered the first part, we can answer the second part much easier.
So going back to a question that Jen brought up that we didn't fully address, the reason that we separated the organizations and individuals grants from the events grants is because we were talking about making sure that we prioritize and supported events specifically. So it got separated to make sure that we were doing that. If we put them back together, then it's on us when we go to decide what we're funding to then readdress what are we prioritizing.
Yeah, that's true.
So we can do that, but originally we split it out as delineating it as a priority.
Yeah, well, we could write one grant and then, but when we are looking at our budget, we're like, well, in the event section, we have this much left to give away. And then in the organization, whatever art section, we have this much left to give away. So we could suss out who's going where and what we have to give away.
And no one I mean, okay, it's public record, but we could always make a decision later that, hey, we have $5,000 less in this event budget, and we've got couple people in here who are trying to start a education for the arts or something else that's not an event. We can make a decision as the commission to reallocate those funds from one grant to the other. We're not locked in. We approve the budget. I mean, we can reapprove the budget.
I think that transparency of what we're putting out in the world that's why having it be more broad so that we can then make those choices
Yeah.
rather than being but you didn't put all that 20K into events.
Yeah.
Where's that $3,000?
Yeah.
I just think that
Well-
being clear.
But that's what us changing it halfway through, we send these out, we get people to submit applications for both grant types. And we end up getting to the end and we're realizing, hey, we've got still $4,000 left. Right now we're gonna open it up we'll allocate those to a general grant fund. You submit either application, events or whatever, and we can allocate those funds. But that would still be in the minutes and the records and transparent.
Yeah.
We're not hiding that from people, but
So wouldn't it be more time effective and easier for us if we got all of the individual, all of the organization, and all of the events, our budget, proposals, divide up, as opposed
Yeah.
to applying for events?
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
if we don't spend it all,
Yeah.
then give it to this other, just get them all at the same time and then divide up the pizza.
we can do that. But your assumption is that we're gonna get enough requests to cover all the funds that we have available. Now, maybe we will, maybe we won't.
We will.
Well,
This is gonna be.
But that's
no
true
trouble.
whether
There's gonna be no
you
trouble
divide
with
it or
people
not.
asking for that.
well, that,
I think
That's
you'll
true whether
hit
you
the
divide it
money,
or
will
not.
hit.
but you're also estimating that everyone's gonna be ready right at the same time, and I don't think everyone's gonna be ready. If we got this out this week and we started them on March 1st, I don't think everyone's gonna be ready March 1st to give you their grant proposal, right?
And they go through the next cycle then.
No, but what I guess, I'm trying to clarify here.
We can award the money by June, we have to award the money, I don't know that they necessarily have to spend it.
Correct. So what I'm trying to say is that my suggestion is that we keep it as events and we keep it as operational organization, whatever we want to call it, for anything not event related. We go through and we open it up and we see what we get. And if after, 2-3 months of getting applications in and reviewing them and approving the ones we do, we come to the realization, hey, budget-wise, we got 1,000 in events, and we got 3,000 left in operation. We'll just, as a commission, move it to one, and then what we get left, it doesn't matter. It's in a general grant fund. We'll give out to, if someone comes in and wants 2,000 for an event, we then have it available to give them 2,000 for that event.
So are you proposing multiple grant cycles? So we do a grant cycle and then you're proposing proposing hypothetically, we don't get enough, and so then we just run the whole cycle again? Because we can't just give
No, but
away.
if we do if we do one cycle and we say you have to submit it this week to get in the cycle, but we don't get everyone's submissions.
Well, we
I would
wouldn't do
say-
that.
You do it far enough in advance,
Yes.
people, you do it like 2 or 3 months out, like,
Yeah.
we get you get the thing online, you make sure people can find it, and then like, they have like 4 months to write their grant.
Or whatever
to
our
get it done.
timeline is.
Or whatever,
And-
whatever's, when we're giving away the money.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Let me just throw something out there. Here's spaghetti getting thrown at the wall. I think the thing that is, so I'm hearing pros for combining it all together into one, not separating out events versus other kinds of support for artists. Here's what I'm just gonna throw this out and you can react. Keep them together as one category. So you're saying, and I'm gonna repeat what Choir said. What is the purpose of these grants? Is to support artists and art-related activities that benefit the community of Oregon City. That's the purpose.
Yep,
Eligibility, if I'm an individual artist who lives in Oregon City or if I'm an organization that's based in Oregon City.
correct.
Amount to apply for, $1,000 to $10,000. And then give a deadline and then give people 2 or 3 months to get their applications in. We promote it March 1st, you got, well, give
Yeah,
people,
timeline,
yeah.
yeah. I would say, yes, that is a really good summary, and I would agree. I think, does that sound like the thing we've all been kind of dancing and circling around, minus a few minor details like alcohol or other things?
Right.
I think the only thing I would bring back up is if we want to do the simple application versus the
Yeah.
more complex.
complicated.
Which I think if we're doing like one grant structure, purpose, eligibility, timeline, funding, evaluation criteria. And I put evaluation criteria in that part because we do have to let people know, like, this is kind of what we're looking for, you have to meet this mark. And that's gonna help them apply too. Then that streamlines, we just have to put one grant out there. We're not writing 2 different grants, but
Yeah,
we
same
can
grant,
have
just 2 different
simple
processes.
application, harder application. I definitely, I
Same
think that's a
timeline.
nice, same timeline.
Very simple, that sounds
Yeah.
really,
It's simple, and I'm happy to go with that decision if everyone else wants to do that. My one concern is that the application is gonna be a little bit more complex because if you're doing an event, there's gonna be different criteria we're gonna judge you on versus, so you're gonna have to know exactly which answers and stuff like that. So it's gonna make the application more complex than maybe our process, but I don't know, it's kind of on us where that burden lies.
Yeah.
I would prefer to keep it separate, but if everyone else wants to go, I'm happy to do that. I think we're better off getting the program launched
Yeah.
and getting funds out
Yeah.
than doing too much due diligence work on it, right?
and this might be a live and learn year.
Yeah,
We
that's
do it
true.
really, really simple, and then
Yep.
we're like, next year, you know what we should do?
Yeah, this is our first, yeah.
And as somebody who's written and applied for many grants, I'm not seeing any red flags with what the direction we're heading right now.
Yeah, feels good.
So do we want to nail down any of those things tonight? Purpose, eligibility, dates, funding, evaluation
Can
criteria?
we take a 5-minute break?
Oh.
And then, I need to take a 5-minute break. And then, yeah, I would love to delve into that, and see how far we get on putting the structure together. I think it's great.
All righty, well, it's,
So we want to be back at 8 o'clock?
Oh my gosh, 8 o'clock.
all right, thank you.
Access to
He's ready.
Grant.
Okay, all right, we are back from our intermission to continue our grants discussion. I believe we left off with a really good parameter that was set over there. And now we're going back to Choir's suggested bullet points. I think we have a basic purpose, what we're talking about, laid out. Eligibility, I know we mentioned it a little bit, talking about the alcohol, and being in Oregon City, located within the city limits, and the event or project or whatever also being within Oregon City. Do we have any other items on eligibility? I don't think we actually decided on the alcohol thing that I brought up. I think we just talked about it.
So, building on that,
Yes, but.
I think that we should make sure, I mean, I would imagine there are restrictions that the city puts on the funds, like, because they are city
That's
funds.
yes, thank you.
And so if there are things, and I would hope that it would be like
Yes.
being able to spend money on
Yeah.
alcohol,
Yeah.
that those be included. And if there are other types of, so
Yeah,
anyway, I don't know.
I mean, that's like one sentence, and, things not allowed to be spent on whatever that is of like,
Yeah, well, we'll have our city attorney review what
Yeah.
we come up with, but I think it's
Yeah.
pretty fair to say we won't use public funds for alcohol.
So,
And, yeah,
Josh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
someone down there.
go ahead.
Oh, so we were talking about criteria, right? So
Eligibility.
eligibility. Or Oregon City artists, I would say an Oregon City address, because there are a lot of people that live outside the city limits that have Oregon City addresses. So as long as the organization's within, has an Oregon City address, or
I would, so an address opposed to what would be,
if you said city limits versus Oregon City address.
so is it,
So my parents live outside the city limits, but they have an Oregon
Their
City
address
address.
is Oregon City,
okay,
yeah.
yeah.
They live
It's
closer
a
to
confusing
Brentwood.
distinction, but I think I understand, and if we say address, that everybody agree with that?
Yes.
So,
And accessibility was another eligibility criteria. Josh, did you have
yeah,
one?
so we talked about the, artist doesn't have to necessarily be from Oregon City, or organization has to be Oregon City if they're doing an event and it's being held in Oregon City.
A
Geographically.
project too. We don't.
Or
want
project.
yeah.
any
Event or project.
activities have
It has to be,
happen in Oregon
yes,
City.
yes, it has to be occurring here. Trius, do you have a thought?
Do we feel like we're at a point that we can start to take notes on this and we can start to build?
I think she
That's
is
what's
doing that
happening
over
here.
there.
Doing all-
That's what she's
All
doing.
these things just discussed, I'm like
Yeah.
eligibility.
Yeah, that's, yes.
So that's great.
We're doing the list, she's taking the notes.
Wonderful.
I would say secondary is, it either supports tourism, it supports arts education, and it supports community and culture diversity in Oregon City.
Yeah.
Doesn't, like, if it doesn't get all those, that's fine, but it's like kind of the secondary
Yeah.
things we're looking at that are
Yeah.
tied to our
Yeah.
mission statement.
Yeah, I think that falls under the purpose. Yeah. And then what was the next one? Well, dates and timeline, I think we'll have to figure that out in conjunction with the city and the kind of very specific dates on that. Funding.
Funding, yeah.
I think we just.
I think we answered that.
Did we answer that? Do you have good notes on how we divided up our funding?
In terms of the dollar amount that they can. apply
Yeah,
for.
like there's the slightly more difficult application, which was,
State that
what was
again,
it,
so it was like 5,000.
Well, that was based off the 15 and the 20, right? But if we're combining them, maybe we can go a bit bigger.
Oh.
Like, do you want to do 25 to 10, 2,500 to 10,000, and then 250 to 1,000?
That would save us if there was fewer applications and we had applications with bigger amounts.
Yeah.
It could allow us to spend the money.
So you will entertain applications for less than $1,000?
But we also are raising the top limit, I think, is what Josh
So the
was
simple,
accepting.
let's start with the simple one, the simple
250 to
application.
1,000.
Yeah.
$250 to $1,000.
Yeah. And then the next one's 10 up from that, basically
But-
2,500 and 10,000. Right? Multiple of 10.
That seems a little like top heavy in the
Yeah.
divide. Doesn't it, like,
Well-
maybe the simple one goes up to 2,000 or,
Yeah.
and then anything over that is the more complicated application?
Or 2,500.
Or 2,500, yeah, somewhere in that range.
$250 to $2,500, and then
simple application.
2,500 to 5,000.
Well, they
5,000
can't
to 10.
touch. Yeah.
Or
think we talked
5
about-
to 10.
Yeah, or we could say, what, like,
Well,
4,000
9,
Yeah,
whatever,
right.
yes.
So $250 up to
I think she gets the that touch.
$2,499. And then the next category would be $2,500 up to $4,999.
Well, Josh was just saying raising that to the,
Bring it to
we're-
10,000, so there'd be two.
Two categories, not
Two
two.
categories, not three.
Okay.
Two, 250 to, you said
$250.
and then 2,500 to 10,000.
Does that make, that's what I was thinking. Does everybody else, does that sound right?
Agree.
I feel that's, both of those are in good ballparks in terms of the types of requests we're gonna get. I think you're gonna either have people that are gonna go for that larger amount, somewhere in that 10,000 or 25 to 10,000, or someone's gonna go
Yeah.
for the smaller one. You're not gonna have people that are gonna be
Yeah.
way up or way down.
Choir?
Okay, so not to throw a monkey wrench. So if you have a very difficult application and a simple application, I think the money amount at the lowest should jump. Like, I think like it could be like 5,000 to 10,000 or 4,000 to 10,000, because I'm not gonna go through a super hard application for only like $100 or $500 more dollars. Like, that doesn't seem like a fair thing to ask people to apply for. Like, I feel like if you're gonna have a super hard application, it needs to be a higher amount. The low end needs to be higher. Does that make sense? Like,
I would rather keep it simple and have it 250 to 2499, 2,500 to 10,000.
For simplicity reasons, I mean, I'm not gonna fuss over $500. It could be 3,000, but I would agree. I think the size of the project and the size of the entities change
Yeah.
considerably when you go over that amount.
As part of the application, I would like to suggest we add in, or after a survey of people who get the proposals or who submit applications, to get feedback, because again, this is a work in progress.
Oh,
Next year, we
100%,
can,
yeah. I
we
agree.
can improve, so we'd have some opportunity for that, but that's
Yeah.
side, let's not discuss that here.
Yeah. So if we do get applications, a lot at 3,000, like you're saying, that end up having to go into the hard, maybe we move it, but.
Yeah, I think that if we were able, if we use the community enhancement program sort of guidelines as a basis, they have information about it, exit report and
Yeah.
whatnot, that I think is valuable, that we
Yeah.
can kind of just sort of cut and paste from there.
Okay. Jen, do you agree with that?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so next we have, we just did funding. So that goes into the next thing, evaluation criteria, which you were just talking about. And so I think this one's really important because it also defines what we want to get out of it, like, or what we want. Yeah, it values how, if it's successful, which is, so Choir, do you have any examples? I know you have these great handouts of an evaluation
So,
criteria.
I have the rack, I'm copying rack. So they have review criteria, strength of concept, quality of art making / experience, impact on the applicant. Meaning like if you're doing a project.
So thinking about like after the thing is complete, like how do you evaluate it after?
Okay, yeah.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, okay, I was
Because
thinking
when they
this
have to
is-
submit their final report, it's like, how do you assess if it was successful?
Oh, okay.
Because they have to know, they have to know that ahead of time, what we're gonna ask them, so that they can track that information to be able to report it. So if we need to know how many people attended, they need to know that we need to know that so they can keep track and give us that information.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or if we need to know like an average age or
Yeah.
something.
Is that in the grant structure or is that in the grant application? Like that?
You should tell them in the grant application
Okay.
so that they can then gather that information. Like it has to be given, they need to know that information ahead of time.
Well, we can include that in the application, and then basically when they report back, they give us an update, like,
Yes.
yeah,
It would then be in the final report.
yeah, so,
The Metro Enhancement Grant, which Karen in fact brought a copy and is readily available, I think in the original application, it goes through all the criteria that you have to meet for reporting at the end.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
right
the
from the
reporting,
beginning, when you apply, you go, oh, when I finish this project, I got to do this, this, and that. And this is a very simple application, and it's city-sponsored, and it's city-run, and the staff is familiar with it, the Metro Enhancement Grant. So,
Is that it there?
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of one of their final reporting criteria?
Well, what it says in the exit report,
Exit report, yes, many names, yes.
yeah, I guess what it just talks about is a description of the program, a description of the accomplishments, final budget, measures of performance.
Yes,
I.e.
that is-
number of people served, effect of the project or program on the city. And then it talks about a narrative of how the funds were spent and additional sponsors. So,
I mean, that seems like all information that we would want to have.
Well,
Yeah.
but if someone's asking for money, is there any case where someone wouldn't have some of those criteria and they would have to request not to be evaluated against that? Like, a number of people served, if it's an artist who's doing a.
Well, it's not that they would know that ahead of time, it's that they have to be able to have the capacity to gather that information. So we have to decide it and tell them as they're applying so that they know. It's not that they have to answer that question, we have to give them that information.
And sometimes
you know what I
what you
mean?
do is you can put not applicable for whatever money they got from it. If it just has nothing to do with their project, but we
Yeah.
accepted it to fund it, they can put not applicable, you know that word? Because of such and such.
But we just have to decide ahead of time so that they have that information.
I think it'd be cool to have one of them be where in, like, what location in Oregon City did your event project take place?
I like that too.
Yeah, and that is part of the application. You have to give a whole description of the project, where it is, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where it's located, like where did the event take place? I would ask a question that's a little more open, like what communities did you serve? And then a head count is good.
When you mean communities, what do you mean by, like, how are you dividing that?
Well, I mean, there's ways we could write it that it's a little bit more specific, but it would, if I were to answer that question, let's say it was the Festival of the Arts, then they might say something like, we support, we served the artist community and tourism and Oregon City residents.
Okay.
Or we can say who benefited from
Yes.
who benefited.
Who benefited, maybe a better way.
That's kind of the question they have here is, how will the community benefit by your
Yeah.
project?
Yeah.
And then what is the estimated number of people affected or anticipated
Yeah.
outcomes?
Yeah.
But yeah, you get an idea of who gets to who is benefiting.
So did you get that, who benefited from your ad, event, programming, whatever it is, yeah, phrasing wise. So where it happened, who benefited, how many people attended, what was your final budget? What else?
So the other thing, and this is where I guess I'd just like to be able to see, so that this particular grant says, how does the project meet the selected goals? So there's certain goals of the program. And I feel that we had, through that vision that we put together, we had certain goals. And so it would be nice to be able to say, how does this project, address this?
How about we rephrase it and simplify it for us? How does this project, event, whatever, align with our vision?
Right.
And then
Oh,
we
there you
just
go.
give them the
Right.
vision as
Yep.
we wrote it.
Yes, exactly.
How does your proposed project?
Align with our vision, insert vision.
Align and support
Yeah.
our vision.
Align
Yeah.
and support Arts Commission vision.
And grammatically, that would go probably under the purpose. Like if you're organizing a document.
Is that a question for review after things have happened? or
No,
a
that's
question
why
application?
I'm moving it back up to the
Oh, okay.
top. Because it would be before, we need to know that beforehand.
Yeah,
Do we need to ask them, like, did you end up using all the funds
That would be the budget, right? They have to report the final budget.
to report the final budget? Even if it's a small grant, which we're not, because when we talked about
Yes.
the smaller ones, we asked them not,
Yeah.
they didn't need to submit a budget originally.
Yeah.
So they
even-
can come back to us and provide anything at that point, we wouldn't be
Well,
able
I
to
think
compare
that's
it.
still, even the small one, I would ask them for
You
a
would say,
budget.
yeah, where did
Even
we-
the little one's
Yeah.
gonna have to have a
Yeah.
budget.
It's common practice to
Yeah.
submit receipts, just so you can demonstrate that that's how the money was spent.
Yeah.
Okay, but like, so someone's asking for $250 to get some posters and printouts made to promote an event.
Do you just
We're
give
gonna
them?
ask them for a full budget for that, or? do we
Yeah,
just
it might
want to
be
see?
3 lines, it might be posters and tape, but we need to see that, yes.
Okay.
I've done budgets
I
like
thought we were
that,
trying to
but-
simplify,
I mean, it's still pretty simple, they just write down posters and tape.
well, but are we asking for a full budget of the entire event? If they're asking for,
And that's
No, no,
after
no,
the
no.
fact. That's
No,
after the
but
fact.
even, I would say we don't need to know, like, if it's a small part of a big project, like one person wants to speak at a large event, and they're just wanting to fund their little piece of it, instead
Well,
of being like a volunteer.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree on that one for one reason. So if it's a big event and they are only asking us for $250, that means they are getting funding from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that they already have a budget that has all of that lined out. And so they are not making that budget specifically for the event just to get $250. That budget already exists.
Yeah.
And so they just take that budget and account for how they're gonna get that particular line in that budget. Where is that funding coming from? It's coming from Oregon City. And maybe the $5,000 is coming from Clackamas County Cultural Coalition. And it's all and they're gonna require a full budget. And then it's gonna line out and it's gonna ask, where is your additional funding gonna be? And then they're gonna see, they're gonna fund that, and City of Oregon City is gonna fund the posters. Does that
okay,
make-
so a budget would be required for either application.
I think
Full
so.
budget.
Yes, yes.
And I think that's part of the Metro Enhancement Grant. You have to submit where else you're getting funded, who else are your sponsors, who else.
Because it's proof of concept and proof of support.
So not to go backwards, but then what's the difference between the big budget, the big request and the little request?
The questions.
What questions are
Fewer
different from each
questions,
one?
shorter questions, less questions, but you still have to have a budget.
Yeah, are
We
we,
haven't gotten to the question.
we're not into the grant application building, which we could, are we ready to segue
We're getting
to
close,
that?
we're getting close.
Okay, I'll wait till then. I withdraw my question.
I would draw my question.
Yeah.
Let's wait.
I think we're about to finish evaluation criteria and then we can jump into that.
So I will just say this one thing on
Go
budget,
for it.
which I think is really nice. It says, cost or budget must be reasonably appropriate for the specific need or opportunity,
Absolutely.
right? You know,
Let's
it's kind
take-
of like,
I
that's
agree,
that idea
and we
with
should use
scalable.
that. Yes, yes,
that,
can you add
know,
that? It was-
A bigger
version.
request needs a, more detailed budget, and smaller
Yeah.
request doesn't.
Did you catch that phrase in
No,
our
I
notes?
didn't actually.
Can you read it for us
Steve was
again?
trying to tell me something.
I know,
Okay.
it's fine. Can you read it for
Oh,
us?
yeah, sure. It says cost or budget must be reasonably appropriate for the specific need
So-
or opportunity.
So
Reasonably
if we're
appropriate
going
for the
back, I think
Pacific
these
Union.
apply to what we're talking about now, because we're still in the grant, like, so strength.
I would, that would probably be the questions that we're about to get into, right? Maybe, for like when they apply, review criteria of how we review them?
I would say that's evaluation. Review-
Yeah.
Right,
reviewing something.
evaluation, right.
Yeah,
Well, not like the final report.
yeah, we're not talking, so we started talking about the final report, but we're jumping back and forth to the
A
grant
little
section
bit.
final report.
Yeah, I was going by your
Yeah.
little,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I don't have anything, yeah, so I was talking about, making our, maybe it should be, say, review criteria, like, what are we
Yes.
putting in the structure that we think is important when we're
Yeah.
looking
I
at
think-
people?
Are we ready to go there next? Anything else on that one? We can do what you're talking about right now? I think we're good. Yes, let's do it.
If we were gonna make an evaluation form, is that?
I think we're talking, she's talking about like the actual questions they have to answer in the
Okay.
like simple version, hard version.
Yeah. Like, this is, the review criteria is like, this is just what we're gonna be looking at, hey. In the application, we're letting you know, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for strength of concept, quality of art making or experience, impact on the artist or applicant, engagement with the audience and or community, financial readiness, and alignment with the values.
I see what you mean. So that would almost more make up, like if we had a form that all of us get and we're looking at it and we're like checking boxes
Yeah.
and scoring collectively.
Yeah.
That would
But
be
isn't
that.
the evaluation after, like?
No, this is not for the I'm sorry. This is in the grant structure so people can read it like, hey. this
Oh
is what
yeah,
we're
they
gonna
should
do.
be able to read it too.
Yeah.
But then that's what we would then in turn evaluate
Wow,
them
we're-
on. They would
yeah.
see
Yeah.
it up front and then we would use those same criteria that we shared with them to
Evaluate the application
evaluate
and
the application.
evaluate the outcome after.
Right, but evaluating the outcome, but it's different than final report. Final report is like the information they have to gather to provide to us.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah, but I'm just
Just
saying
not to
that,
confuse things.
yeah, okay. Questions?
I'm sorry I interrupted.
So can we get ready to, is everybody comfortable to start the actual application? Our simple questions, our big questions, and then, yes, submit that. This is how we're going to evaluate you. That's what we put at the end, so they're aware of everything.
Can I make a suggestion, given the time?
I know.
We have a lot of people that have examples here. It might be good to everyone just go and evaluate some questions they find online for
Yeah,
grants
like,
and
yeah,
send them to Ann, and then we evaluate an entire list of questions like we did for the survey at our next meeting. And it's much easier for people to cross things off than it is to try and
Right?
prepare. So we could maybe poll things and yeah, I mean, the general stuff, you don't have to worry about, like your name, your organization, your address, those things can all be covered, but later, but.
I agree. Choir, would you be interested in sending, because the review criteria, which I think is also super important, but it's like separate from the questions?
Yes.
If you know what I mean?
Yep.
So we can get both of those elements done, because I know you're like, it's like right there, and then you're
Yeah.
like ready to, but we're just kind of out of time.
And,
Yeah, and if you
I'm
want
gonna
me
forward that
to,
to you, Ann.
that's great.
Yeah.
and if you can include our mission and vision, so we have one thing that has
Yeah.
question, mission, vision, review, everything in once, and so we can kind of just visualize it, and that's
Yeah.
what we could spend our next meeting kind of just going through and.
And so can I clarify too? So what we're gonna work on, all of our little homework is, we're going to put together, here's the simple questions for the lower, here's our more involved questions for the higher. We bring them together at the next meeting
Yeah.
and check, cross,
Yeah,
done.
when you send them to Ann, tell her which ones you want on the simple, which ones you want on the more complex one. And then she'll organize them in that fashion, then we can go through and if we need to move ones from one to the other, we can, but at least it just.
I would imagine that some of the base questions would be the same for the simple, and then there would
Well,
be
that could be, you
additional
could put
questions
both,
for the hard.
right? I'm just saying, it would be great to just simplify it for Ann, so she can
Yeah.
organize them by that.
Totally.
and-
Yes. That was trippy.
Someone got on TikTok.
Can I throw one thing in really quick?
Yes,
I mean,
we got
can
3
discuss-
minutes.
We have 3 minutes.
I will touch your wrist at the appropriate moment.
And we can discuss for opinion next, but I talked to Denise McGriff, the mayor, a couple of nights ago and said, many of the people in the committee would like to be more active. What are the regulations? What can we do? How can we do that? And she said, you can do a city-sponsored, art commission-supported event. And so I have an idea that I've gone pretty far along. I am waiting for some approvals for a community art project. The cost would be between $1,500 and $2,000. That's it, to do a 24-piece community interactive mural along Railroad Ave. I've already met with Union Pacific. They're going to see if they can get final approvals for it. I've let everybody know, all preliminary, just planning. We're just gonna see how far we can get if this is an actual project. So putting that out there,
Can we put that on the agenda for discussion?
Potential project on Railwood Avenue.
potential interactive community mural, Railroad Ave.
Love it.
So Denise says we're allowed to do projects?
Yes, she said, just like the Arch Bridge celebration, where there were city commissioners which were involved in that, they were not public meetings. It was an event that city commissioners supported and sponsored with the help of the Art Commission. You can do an event like that. It is not a public meeting, it's an event that is city-sponsored. The language, she said, remember, this is the language, city-sponsored, Art Commission supported.
Cool.
So if city's sponsoring it, does that mean they're paying for it? Or does
Well,
come
it
out?
may have to come out of our funds.
It would come
because
out of
we're
our
city
budget,
funds.
that's just why I asked for it to go on the agenda, because we would all collectively have to decide to allocate part of our budget, which would now then go away from the grants.
And I've already asked
to
Union
this.
Pacific if they would sponsor it financially.
So we would have to, as a,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth the conversation
Oh,
on the next
yeah,
agenda,
for sure.
because I
Yeah.
do think that, the other way to think about it is that as well could be an application into this program, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you
Can the
know, I
city
mean,
grant money
in
to itself?
essence, excuse me?
Can the city grant money to itself
Well,
like that?
it wouldn't be a grant, but
Well, I think we had part of, well, why wouldn't it be? I mean,
because it's
why would,
giving, like he said, we'd be giving ourselves money, so why would we fill out
Well,
an
but the
application
city
for
did that
ourselves?
for the Archbridge celebration. The
Well, I
city
know,
was-
I think the application process would be silly. We would decide
Oh, I
if
see
we
what you
want to
mean.
use the money.
Right.
but I feel as if it's an example
Yes.
of the type of thing that we would be looking for in an event. And part of what we had talked about initially,
We could use our
And-
review criteria to evaluate and
I
decide.
mean, yeah, I mean, I think anyway, I mean, I just feel like it.
Did the mayor happen to say what type of approval would be required by, the commission or?
The city or whomever.
We would agree as a commission, and then we would submit it for the city's approval
The city
on
would have
that.
to approve it.
So it'd be, yeah.
Okay.
And I imagine, just so everybody knows, if we're doing a thing, like an actual thing, then that means it is,
Gotta work it.
you guys gotta go there and do it. Like,
Right,
I got 4
exactly.
jobs, so.
Right, and that would only, just so we did the Archbridge, we put it up, who wants to do this, who wants to volunteer? Well, Mary Andrews managed
Right.
it and ran the
So-
project with me. There were 3 or 4 other commissioners that came and volunteered for the day.
So I would just more make sure that there are enough commissioners on board that can physically be there to support the project.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What I want is honesty, for someone to say,
Yes.
sorry, I wish I could, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
No problem. And the Archbridge celebration went really well and very smooth and.
Just as
a lot
part of the
fun.
planning process, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, 8:31, any other things for the evening? Going once?
I'm sorry for all the times I interrupted.
Good. Enthusiasm is good.
That's great input.
There was no wrist touching.
Oh, good.
Awesome, yeah, so if you get questions to me with,
Yeah, all right, I know I don't have to hit it, I'm gonna hit it anyway. There we go.
all right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. We didn't even take all your